everyone. So my assigned topic is all about designing an inclusive learning environment. So first, I'm going to read the objectives. At the end of the discussion, the participants must have defined what an inclusive learning environment means, justify the need for inclusivity in promoting equal learning opportunities, and develop teaching materials that address the needs of all learners. The next is the guide questions. 1. How can teachers address the diverse needs, abilities, and backgrounds of students? 2. How can an inclusive learning environment benefit both students and teachers? 3. What underlying factors contribute to exclusion in traditional classrooms, and how can this be addressed in an inclusive learning environment? 4. How might students' characteristics such as culture, gender, or learning style influence the effectiveness of UDL strategies? 5. To what extent do you think FLUs are effective in reducing school dropouts and promoting inclusivity in education? So those guide questions will be covered in the following slides. So first, I'm going to ask you, what words come into your mind when you hear the word inclusive learning environment? From the word inclusivity. So it's all about collaboration, accessibility, digital tools, and flexibility. So who benefits from inclusivity? Is it students with special needs, teachers, or all learners? So in an inclusive learning environment, everyone wins because it creates a classroom where all students feel valued, supported, and able to succeed. So ang ganun din siya, ang inclusive learning environment din is tanan diri ang makabenefit, even teachers ang makabenefit gihapon siya sa learning sa inclusive learning environment. So an inclusive learning environment is a space where all students, regardless of their backgrounds, abilities, or learning styles, feel welcome, valued, and supported. It is designed to foster equity by recognizing and accommodating diverse learning needs while promoting a sense of belonging. So ang inclusive learning environment ay is mo siya ang space where naadiri tanan ang mga different learning styles of students, different backgrounds, abilities. And then despite of those differences, so dapat an inclusive learning environment is dapat ma-feel nila welcome sila, gi-value and get supported by the teachers. So ang kaning learning environment is giko na siya so that kanang ma-accommodate ang ilang mga different learning needs, no, while ma-promote ang sense of belonging, like kanang wala kay favoritism. So mo ni siya ang inclusive learning environment para walay ma-left behind nga students. So, defining learning environment. The Glossary of Educational Reform 2014 defines the learning environment as the diverse physical locations, contexts, and cultures in which students learn. So, ang kaning learning environment ay is mo na siya ang isa ka lugar nga diha nasud tanan ng mga different learning styles, mga different physical locations, like sa cultures ng mga students. So, naadiri tanan. So, the term also encompasses the culture of a school or class, its presiding ethos and characteristics, including how individuals interact with and treat one another, as well as the ways in which teachers may organize an educational learning environments include a school of college campus, an online course, military training, friends, family, and work nature, and personal or technology-based learning environment. So, ang ganun di ay characteristic sa learning environment is so dapat ang teachers is mag-organize na siya o kanang educational learning environments, like for example sa a school of a college campus or even sa online course na. So there are two important points that must be made here. So the first one is the learner is the one who has to do the learning. Some students learn in many different ways in different contexts. So ang pasabutan niya is ang even teachers is dili maka mandar nga mo na dapat ma-learn. So ang pasabutan niya is the learner is the one who has to do the learning. So dapat ang students ra jud ang makakuan sa learning, no? For example, so it means that learning is the student's personal responsibility. So ang learning, of course, ang student jud ang ilaha jud ang responsibility nga dapat mo learn sila. So teachers can guide, explain, and provide activities, but the learner must actively participate and make effort to understand. So ang buhaton na sa teacher ani no sa inclusive learning environment is dapat mo guide sila, and then dapat of course sa kaning number 1 is dapat ang isa ka estudyante kasi sila man ang mo kuan sa ilang own learning. So dapat mo cooperate sila, like mo manikamot po sila nga makasabot sila ingana. So number 2, since learners must do the learning, the aim is to create a total environment for learning that optimizes the ability of students to learn. So since ang students man ang learners man ang makakuan sa ilang own learning, so ang aim ani is dapat ang teacher is mo na siya ang mo design og inclusive learning environment, no, para more engaging and then para masuportahan pud ang learning sa mga students, no. For example, like providing clear lessons, so ang teacher is mo provide siya og mga clear nga lessons, supportive guidance, so of course supportive guidance, and engaging activities para para makakuan na to ang ilahang learning masuportahan. And then so here is my first guide questions. How can teachers address the diverse needs, abilities, and backgrounds of students? So to effectively address diverse students' needs, educators should implement strategies like differentiation, culturally responsive teaching, and creating inclusive learning environments. So dapat so as a teacher, no, kung mo address ka mga different needs or abilities or backgrounds sa imong mga students, dapat ma-implement kag differentiation. So ang kani siya is mo siya nasod na dili mga different methods kung saan mo pag-cater ang tagsa mga learning styles sa isa ka students. So this involves understanding individual students' differences, providing varied learning materials and activities, and fostering a sense of belonging and respect for all backgrounds. So, ang gani siya is kanang dapat imong sabton nga okay, ang kaning bata is kanang naani siya or mao ni hang culture. So dapat imong sabton dili kay imong kanang itanaw dili bitaw kay imong pagtanaw niya is lahi siya culture, unlike sa uban nimo mga students. So dili na dapat ma-foster nimo as a teacher, ma-foster nimo ang sense of belonging para ma-reduce ang bully pud sa imong mga students. For example, a TLA teacher in Panghagban noticed that her learners has a diverse needs. Some are preferring written tests, oral recitations, or hands-on activities. So she addressed it by conducting differentiated instruction where students can collaborate with others and to have a learning environment. So mo na siya no, na-notice niya nga na ay diverse needs ang iyang students mo na nag-ano siya iyang conduct ang differentiated instruction where masudid to a written test, oral recitation, or hands-on activities. Next is components of an effective learning environment. So developing a total learning environment for students in a particular course or program is probably the most creative and challenging part of teaching. So ang pag-develop din mo sa total learning environment is dili siya dali lang kaingon nga okay ingan na kung buhaton. No, so dapat imo gid siya nga planuhon og maayo because this part is very challenging sa part sa teaching. They will also include the characteristics of the learners and their means of intercommunication. So dapat ma-include ni nga mga following intercommunication. No? So the first one is the goals for teaching and learning. So dapat kung before ka mag-develop sa total learning environment, so dapat naka-set na imong goal, imong clear goals kung unsa jud imong paagi sa teaching and kung unsa pa ma-learn sa mga students. Then the second is the activities that support learning. So mga activities nga mo support sa learning, like for example dapat appropriate ang mga activities nga appropriate or connected ang imong activities sa imong content, and also mogamit pod og mga engaging activities para ma-foster ang sense of belonging sa mga students no, para walay left behind, and then makuha ang inclusive learning environment. Then the resources that are available such as textbooks, technology, or spaces. So dapat ang mga resources is available. So dapat dili siya makakuha gap between students no, katong mga walay access or katong mga walay technology. So dapat kung magamit kang mga resources, dapat capable ang tanan. Then the assessment strategies that will best measure and drive learning. So ang assessment strategies po nimo, so kanang dapat magamit ka o mga assessment nga maka-discriminate between high and low students no, para makuan ganin mo para mahimo siyang effective kung asay kung nabudyo nakamaor nabudyo wala. Then the culture that infuses the learning environment. So infuses means add or mixes creativity into the lesson so that they become more engaging. So the culture, so dapat ang culture is kanang bitong dapat ma-infuse siya sa learning environment. So guide questions number 2. How can inclusive learning environment benefit both students and teachers? So an inclusive learning environment provides students with a sense of belonging and a positive attitude towards schoolwork. So when students feel valued and included in the classroom, they tend to perform better academically. So diba, sakto siya no kung maka-feel mo nila nga included sila sa ana nga environment is mo participate ang mga students ana, like dili na sila mauwaw na they are more likely to participate in class discussion, ask questions when they need help, and complete their assignments on time. So mo na importante gid siya ang inclusive learning environment kay kanang mas smooth gid ang performance sa kabata. Ginado sila. For example, at a secondary school in Panghagban, a teacher integrates inclusive practices by assigning group projects where students with special needs collaborate with their peers. So the students learn to respect differences and value teamwork, while the teacher gains new strategies for handling diversity and see stronger classroom relationships. So for example, kanino gi-integrate niya ang mga practices iyang gipang-assignan og groups, gipang-assignan niya ang kada groups where ang tanan nga mga with katong mga na special needs or katong mga kanang mahinhin nga mga students maka-collaborate sa ilahang mga classmates. And then with that, no, ang students is maka-learn sila nga i-respect ang ilahang mga diversity and ma-value pud ang ilahang teamwork. And besides, ang teacher po is naka-gain po naka-learn po siya og new strategies kung saan pag-handle sa mga sa iyang students diversity. So with this, ma-reduce ang bullying and ma-promote ang supportive environment para sa tanan. So culture and learning environments. Culture is a critical component of any learning environment. So ang culture, yes, very true no. Ang culture gid ang pinaka-critical component sa learning environment. Nga naman, ang culture magud sa kada students is lahi-lahi gyud siya, which is pag lisod ta og adjust, no mo na lisod kayo i-adjust. It is important to be aware of the influence of culture within any particular learning context and to try and shape that culture as much as possible towards supporting the kind of learning environment that teachers believe will be most effective. The learning environment needs to be appropriate for the context in which students will learn. So dapat ang learning environment is appropriate siya no para sa context sa students para maka-learn sila. However, before even beginning to design a course or a program, teachers should be thinking of what this learning environment could look like. So before ka mag-design og course or program sa inyong klase, so dapat ang teacher is magunaw na sa siya if kung unsay result sa iyang pag-develop sa total learning environment, like included ba ang tanan ingana. So i-consider na niya before siya mag-design og course or program. They need to make sure that learners are able to work within an environment that helps them do this. In other words, the teacher's role is to create the conditions for success. So muna teacher role gid sa teacher ra is mo design siya og learning environment where ang tanang mga estudyante is kanang ma-ensure niya nga included ang tanan para tanan na success. Kay kung ma-feel mo sa mga students nga included sila kanang mas mugana ang ilahang pag-eskwela, like mo-participate sila. No, unlike sa katong mga dili feel nila dili included kay mostly masigi absent kay dili ganahan sa classroom, ingon na kay ma-left behind sila. So muna importante kayo ang inclusive learning environment. So technology now enables us to build a wide variety of effective learning environments that can differ significantly from the traditional classroom. But technology alone is not enough, of course. No, so technology is karon mo naman ni common bro. So technology is daghan po siya kayo o daghan po siya ka especially sa mga websites nga maka-foster og engagement sa mga students, no. But if kung mo ta technology alone is dili siya enough naman, wala bitaw kay baw sa for example, basta na calamity nga mukuan, so dili siya dapat suportaan siya, no, kay napay-uban nga dili maka-access magud mga estudyante pod. Many technology-based learning environments are lacking with some of the key components that make an effective learning environment. So some is lacking. So guide questions number 3: what underlying factors contribute to exclusion in traditional classrooms, and how can this be addressed in an inclusive learning environments? So exclusion in traditional classrooms often comes from rigid teaching methods, lack of accessibility, and limited inclusivity. So technology transforms classrooms into inclusive learning environments by offering flexibility, accessibility, personalization, and opportunities for all learners to engage meaningfully. So kato sa una is magud kay kanang dili ingon nga tanan is ma-feel included siya. For example, in a rural school in Bohol, classes are overcrowded with 60 plus students in one room. The traditional chalk and talk methods excludes learners who need more individualized attention. No, so di ba kasagaran kung daghan kay mga estudyante is dili tanan makiter kay tungod sa kadaghan. So kato sa una katong traditional nga method is dili gyud ma-foster ang inclusive learning environment na atong time. Some students at risk of dropping out because they need to help on the farm struggle to keep up. To address this, the school implements the modified in school approach or MISOSA, where learners spend part of the week in class and part at home with modules. This flexibility reduces absenteeism and keeps students engaged. So muna siya ang way sa pag-design sa inclusive learning environment nga para maiwasan ang pag-risk sa mga pag-drop out sa mga students. So muna nag-conduct sila og modified in school approach, which is katong modular learning nga ang uban, for example 60 plus sila, ang uban is kanang dili na makiter. So muna nga ang uban nga mga need mo tabang sa ilahang nga pag-farm is tagaan ra sila og modular, and then mo sila sa school. So, universal design in education. The practice of universal design in education, or UDE, goes beyond accessible design for people with special needs to make all aspects of the educational experience more inclusive for students. Characteristics include those related to gender, race, ethnicity, age, stature, disability, and learning styles. So, ang universal design in education, or UDE, is kanang para ni siya sa mga people nga na special needs, no? And para ma-included bitaw sila sa education. So, for example, kaning mga characteristics sa mga students, like sa race or group of people who share similar physical traits, and then ethnicity means cultural backgrounds, and then ilang age, stature or reputation or status, disability, and learning style. So, the Center for Applied Special Technology, or CAST, defines universal design for learning, or UDL, as a research-based set of principles that together form a practical framework for using technology to maximize learning opportunities for every student. According to Rules and Meir 2006, when the UDL is applied, curriculum designers create products to meet the needs of students by offering multiple means of representation to give learners various ways of acquiring information and knowledge, multiple means of actions and expressions to provide learners various ways for demonstrating what they know, and multiple means of action and engagement to tap into learners' interest, provide appropriate challenges, and increase motivation. So, guide questions number 4. How might students' characteristics such as culture, gender, or learning styles influence the effectiveness of UDL strategies? So, students' characteristics such as culture, gender, and learning styles directly shape how effective UDL strategies will be, because these differences affect how learners access, process, and demonstrate knowledge. And then universal design for learning, or UDL, promotes multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement, which allows teaching to adapt to this variation. For example, in a multicultural classroom in Mindanao, students belong to different groups like Cebuano, Tausug, and Maranao with unique cultural backgrounds. During a lesson on Philippine history, the teacher uses multiple means of representation like storytelling, visual timelines, and digital videos with local translations. Students are also given options for demonstrating knowledge. Some make posters, others present skits, while others write reflective essays. By respecting culture, gender rules, and learning preferences, the teacher makes lesson more meaningful and inclusive. So, ang kanidi ay universal design is ikuan na siya para makita bitaw ang tanan nga mga learning styles sa students, no. For example, kani naiuban nga nag-write og reflective essays, ang uban nag-posters, ang uban nag-present nya muna by respecting culture. So, sa paagi na nga method gi-respect ang cultures or gender rules o learning preferences of students. So, flexible Flexible learning options in the Philippine setting. So the Philippine of Education or DOH mandated public and private schools to provide flexible learning options or FLUs. Again, sa ganito meaning sa FLUs, flexible learning options. In order to accommodate the needs of learners, FLUs provide a menu of learning of learners. So ang FLUs or ang flexible learning options is muna siya nag-provide og menu sa learning sa mga learners or sa students, like kung unsay paagi or unsay paagi nga na. So FLUs allow for variations in organization, approaches, and modalities of teaching and interventions, and pathways that are responsive to the needs, contexts, circumstances, and diversity learning. So, there are two main categories of FLUs, or flexible learning options. So, muna sila ang menu sa muna siya yung menu sa learning of learners. So, first one is alternative delivery modes, or EDMs. So, are instructional or learning modalities that do not strictly follow the typical setup for regular classroom instruction, but follow the formal K-12 curriculum and content. So, ang ganun siya, ang alternative delivery modes, pwede siya og modular learning, online learning, or blended. So, dili ni siya ingon nga strictly follow siya sa kanang regular setup, like magklase sa isa ka room, nga time, dili. Pwede po siya og modular learning, like test papers lang siya, and then, magfollow gihapon, ang content is magfollow gihapon siya og formal nga K-12 curriculum. So, below are the various types of programs under EDM. So, ang kaning EDMs or alternative delivery mode, so, muna siya ang mga types niya. So, first one is homeschool. Provides basic education to learners in home-based setting with parents, guardian, or tutors as learning facilitators under supervision by DepEd and designated licensed teacher. So, ang kaning siya is capable po ni siya sa mga katong may mga special needs nga. Like, dili bitaw mga normal nga students, di ba? So, ang uban na naisan naman sila sa balay. Like, magkuha na sila ang mga tutors or mga licensed teachers para tuluan na gilang anak. Special nga pagtulo sila anak. So, muna ang homeschool. So, next is MPAC or Instructional Management by Parents, Community, and Teachers. Provide basic education to learners in a school-based setting wherein multi-grade learners are grouped for learning facilitated by peers, parents, or community members under the guidance of an instructional supervisor. It also allows for independent learning. So, ang kaning impact is muna siya katong ato na sa mo ni siya katong i-facilitate lang sila sa ilang mga peers or pwede siya sa parents or sa mga community members. So, ang kaning impact is foster na siya og independent learning sa isa ka students. So, wala gihapon ni siya sa classroom. The next is modified in school approach or MESOSA. Provision of formal education in school and of school to learners in grades 4 to 6 with capacity for independent learning and who could not fully accommodated in school. They receive blended instructions. In school group is the classroom or subject. Teachers and the off-school group is with a teacher facilitator in a separate venue. So, next is night high schools. Learners attend classes after regular school hours. This learning option allows programs completion beyond the prescribed number of years. Open high school program. So, night high school is mo ni siya capable na siya sa katong need bitaw nga mukayod sa adlawan or need nga magtrabaho sa adlawan. And sa gabi is mo eskwela siya. So, mo ni siya ang opportunity para sa mga word-harking people nga so, gustong sabayon ang ilang pagtrabaho o pag-eskwela. So, next is Open High School Program or OHSP. Provides opportunity to all high school learners capable of independent learning to complete basic education through quality distance education. So, guide questions number 5. To what extent do you think FLUs are effective in reducing school dropouts and promoting inclusivity in education? So, flexible learning options or FLUs are highly effective in reducing school dropouts and promoting inclusivity because they directly respond to the diverse needs and circumstances of learners. So, the programs under delivery modes or EDMs provide options for learners who cannot be accommodated in traditional classrooms due to overpopulation, economic struggles, or personal situations, and the alternative system. So, ang katong FLU, katong tuhabo, katong EDMs o ALS, ang EDMs is para to siya sa katong mga classroom nga overpopulation baron or katong mga economic struggles, katong need sila nga magtrabaho, then need po nila isabay ang ilang eskwela. So, capable po sila itong EDMs or alternative delivery modes. Alternative learning systems or ALS is it strengthens inclusivity by reaching out to out-of-school children, youth, and adults who missed or could not complete formal education. So, ang katong alternative learning system is mabuto siya no capable siya sa katong wala bitaw naka-eskwela or wala nakapadayon sa ilang eskwela or formal education. So, manang eskwela sila og ALS para still mapursog hapon nila ang ilang education. Example, a high school in Manila notices several students dropping out to work and support their families. Instead of losing them, the school offers the Open High School Program or OHSP where learners study modules at home and only come to school for consultations and assessment. This allows them to continue earning while pursuing education. So, wala na siya, dili na so mostly makita na siya sa Cebu inyong apart. So, there are the alternative learning systems or ALS is distinguished by the EDMs by its use of the non-formal ALS K-12 basic education curriculum. It is an addition, alternative, and or complement to formal education as it caters to people of all ages but does not necessarily apply a continuous pathway structure. So non-formal education can cover programs contributing to adult and youth literacy and education for out-of-school children as well as programs on life skills, work skills, and social or cultural development. So in general, the program is organized into 6 interrelated learning strands that bring functional literacy and content knowledge together, including ang alternative learning system is dili siya ingon nga nagsunod siya sa formal K-12 basic education. No, so kani siya ang ALS is gitawag na siya og non-formal. So ang sud sa ALS ra or mga learning strand ra or mga subject not subject. Ang mga learning strand ra nga sud sa ALS is mo sila. Learning strand 1, communication skills like English and Filipino. So ang kaning learning or ang ALS is ang i-focus ra ni is ang communication skills like how to speak English and how to speak Filipino. Then learning strand 2, scientific literacy and critical thinking skills. So haluan pa na nila og scientific literacy and critical thinking skills. Learning 3, mathematical and problem solving skills. Learning strand 4, life and career skills. So muna tong katong mga vocational skills, katong mga livelihood. Learning strand 5, understanding the self and society. Learning strand 6 is digital literacy, how to use technologies or mga yan. So in conclusion, a learning environment is more than just a physical classroom. It includes the culture, context, interactions, and strategies that supports how students learn best. So ang learning environment is dili lang kay physical classroom siya. It includes, so ma-include na dili ang katong mga classroom, mga culture, context, interactions between students, and mga strategies sa teachers nga mo support kung unsa jay mas maayo sa isa ka estudyante, like unsa jay best way para maka-learn sila. Effective learning environments combine clear goals, supportive activities, accessible resources, fair assessments, and an inclusive culture that values every learner. So ang effective learning environment gyud is ang nag-consist siya og clear goals, supportive activities or mga engaging activities where maka-foster siya og sense of belonging sa mga students, accessible resources, so katong dili siya makakuan og gap between students, no? Katong mga resources nga dapat capable ra sa tanan. Fair assessment, so dapat fair yung mga assessment where everyone is learning, and inclusive culture that values every learner. So dapat ma-respect ang ilahang kanang different culture. So ika nga nila ang teacher is dapat mo na siya ang role model. So kung imo i-value or i-respect ang ilahang culture, so i-respect para sila sa ilahang mga classmates where makareduce siya og bully sa sud sa classroom. Creating inclusivity means addressing diversity in abilities, culture, gender, and learning styles. So and creating inclusivity, dapat imuhang i-address ang ilang mga diversity, like ilang mga abilities, culture, gender, and learning styles. So, strategies such as Universal Design for Learning or UDL, flexible learning options or FLUS, and differentiated instruction help ensure that all students, including those at risk of dropping out or with special needs, are given equal opportunities to succeed. So, ang mga strategies on how to design learning environment is ang Universal Design for Learning, ang UDL, ug ang FLUS or flexible learning options is nakatabang siya para ang mula bitaw left behind ng mga students. Like, for example, katong mga those at risk of dropping out or katong mga special needs, so makahatagan sila equal opportunity para makaskwela just like the same sa mga normal students. So manay buti pasabot sa designing an inclusive learning environment. So that's all. Thank you.